Oh, g'day all. So this is the 405,000 kilometre Magna wagon TL, and I'm about to do a timing belt change on it, and I'm going to tell you that take some time doing that, and I'll video as much as I can. So I've got it jacked up on stands already. I've got the inner guards out, and I'm about to undo the harmonic balancer bolt. Harmonic balancer with a breaker bar on and a socket on, and well, I'm going to do it the way a mechanic friend of mine showed me, and that is I'm going to give the starter motor a little hit, and hopefully it should come off without a problem. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So there we go. I didn't really mean to run it like that, but bolts out. Okay, so I've taken the idle pulley off from the power steering unit. So it has a nut here, which has got a bolt through it, and then there's a bolt goes through the bottom of that bolt, and that's your tensioner for the pulley, for the belt, and then there's a bolt there. So you undo the two bolts, just loosen them off, and then you can wind the tensioner until the bolt gets slack, the belt gets slack, and then you can take the belt out, and then you can actually take that whole idler pulley off there for the power steering unit. Needs to get out of the way anyway. I'll just climb underneath here and have a look at the other idler pulley. So the belt's off for the alternator and the air conditioner. There's the idler pulley there. So you can see on the front face that idler pulley there's a nut there. So you slacken that nut off, then you can unwind the tensioner bolt there, and then that belt just slides over that idler pulley, and that's got those belts off. Now we'll see what goes later on, but I think the alternator itself has to get unbolted because it's on part of an engine mount that's in our way as well. We'll see how we go with it all. Next in this little job, I'm going to take the covers off. That's what I want to do now. Most of those covers are 10mm bolts, but we can see that there's one there that's probably about a 14, and there's quite a number of those around there. Just need to look around for them. That looks like one. Yeah, that's a 10 down there. Then there's some right down in there. So you get through to a couple down here as well. So I need to make sure you get all those. Okay, so let's see how we go. I think I'm going to put a short extension on and start with the 10mm sockets. Okay, here we go. Beep. It's a bit tight, doesn't want to come out. There we go. So that's the two top covers, and I want to get the one that goes right down the bottom where the harmonic balancer is. So there's a bolt in here. Get that. Okay, got all the bolts undone for that little cover. Let it go down through the bottom. Okay, so there we go. There's the covers laid out. There's 1, 2, 3 covers. So the bottom cover there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, 5, including the one that's in the little hole there. It's recessed, and then in the rear cover at the top there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the front cover there's 1, 2, 3 bolts there, and that's the covers off. So we can have a look now. So we know that this timing belt's done 100,000 kilometres, so you can see what that looks like there. Would I let it go any further? No, I would not trust it because you just don't know. Okay, interesting. What's interesting there is, get that torch to say shine on that. I haven't undone the tensioners for that, and look at that. So I'll have to investigate a little bit. Oh no, I haven't taken the tensioner off. So the last bit of work I did, I found that the timing belt was actually quite slack. So, and I had a bit more slack than that in it. So what I found is that the tensioner is not very good. She's pretty well worn out. So I've got another tensioner I can put on it, so that's fine. So since then, I have brought the engine up to top dead centre, or close there too. So if I have a look underneath here, and if we can have a look there, there's a little, whoops, right next to that pin there on the right hand side of that pin. Let's see if the shadow will show it up. There's a little dimple, so it's right there where my finger is, a little dimple, and then you've got the cog, or the tooth, just there, that lines up with, and right towards the back of the engine there. It's not quite top dead centre yet. Let's see if I can line that up. So right in there, where my finger is there, there's a little mark on the casting there. So what needs to happen is that cog where my finger's running, my fingernail's running on, needs to line up with that there, and that's top dead centre for the engine. And then at the top, there's a little notch in the rocker cover there. So right there's a little notch in the rocker cover there, and right on the end of the pulley there, on that pulley there, there's a little notch in there. So that should be lining up with that there for top dead centre, and one on the front bank as well. So on the front bank, there's once again right there where my finger is, there's the notch, and the other notch is here. So I accidentally slit a tooth or two when that was slack, so I was still going to turn the engine so that the front bank lines up, so the bottom lines up the top dead centre, and that'll be close enough, because I'll have to turn things around to put the belt on anyway. Before I do all that and take the belt off, I need to take this engine mount here out. So the top engine mount needs to come out there. So I unbolt the 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3 that are there, and that engine mount is down here, bolts back to the engine. There's another part of it that bolts back to the engine, so it's like that piece and this piece, and that bolts back to the engine, and the timing belt goes through that engine mount, so that engine mount has to come off. So therefore we've got to jack the engine up, which, alrighty, let's take the top engine mount out. So I'm going to take the bolt that goes through the engine mount here, I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to take the 3 bolts off the top there, so to get that engine mount out totally, and then I'll be able to get to the ones on the engine as well. So, okay, I've taken the washer bottle out, I'm just setting it on the side there, by the way. Tight. Alright, they're ready to come out. There we go, that's the long engine mount bolt. And now the engine mount should just come out. And there we go. The mount here bolts to the engine. One of the problems there is that the alternator actually bolts to that as well. So you need to actually unbolt the pin on the alternator. Well, there is a bolt down here on the alternator. I'm going to unbolt the alternator. I'm going to just let it hang. I'm going to take the rear pivot bolt off and probably slack it off the front bolt there and just let it swing out of the way, and that should be enough room for me to do what I need to do. So we'll try it. So down in there, there's this mount directly underneath that goes into the engine. There's one down the bottom of the bracket there, and at the front there's another 2, and they all look like 14s, and of course they're a little difficult to get to. I've made a noise. Like it's talking. Oh, wow. Wow, I turned the camera off for a while there because I come across some of the most incredibly tight bolts I've ever had to undo. Oh gosh, I thought I had this one undone. Enough. Okay, so there's one more bolt that looks like it goes on the AC bracket. right down in there. Okay, so to pull the lower part of the engine mount out, I did a number of things. I did unbolt. There's a bolt that, oops, crunch. There's a bolt that's down there on the air conditioner bracket that bolts to that engine mount, so that had to come out. As you can see, I have taken the alternator out because we need the extra space. So that all needed to come out. Now, to get this fellow out, there's a lot of juggling around. It's really painful to get out. I ended up getting most of the bolts out of it by moving it up and down either side of the chassis rail to get the bolts out of it, and eventually was able to jiggle that out. That does take a fair bit of jiggling out. It's a right pain. So that's that. The alternator bracket, there's two bolts on the inside there. The lower one bolts you can see there, they bolt onto the cylinder head as well, so you need to unbolt those to get that out. Now, there's not a lot of room to get the alternator out here. Usually always the air conditioner line here needs pushing over to the side because it has a tendency to get in the way. That's just the way it is. Okay, so now I've also removed the timing belt from the engine, and I've got the engine pretty much at top dead center. I'm fairly close, so I'll show you where we are there. So looking underneath the vehicle there, as you can see, I've actually painted some little white points on there. So on the engine block up there, I'll just see if I can hold the torch and camera and everything else at the same time. So I've got a white marker there that I've painted white. That's what we've got to line up with. And there's a little dimple here on the sprocket which I've put some white paint on, and so it's that tooth there needs to line up with that white marker there, and there's a little dimple on the crank angle sensor plate there as well, so they all need to line up. And then up the top end we need to line up. I've painted white as well, so right there's a little dimple or V dimple on the sprocket. I painted a little bit of white there. Needs to line up with the little V that's in the top of the rocket cover there, and the rear one's the same. There's the V in the top of the rocket cover, and there's a little V cut into the sprocket there as well, which I've painted white. And so that tooth needs to line up with those. So we need to get that all to line up when we're putting back together. Now, I'm going to also replace, down there is the idler pulley for the timing belt. So I'm replacing that. That needs to be unbolted off. And also in there, the tensioner pulley as well. Okay, so the kit that I've got does those too. You can buy a kit without them, but I would always recommend replacing your pulleys when you're replacing the time belt for not much more in value. If you're dubious of your water pump, now's the time to do it, because there's your water pump right there. Now, I know this water pump's been changed 100,000 kilometres ago, so I'm going to leave it. There's no signs of it leaking. The bearing sounds good when you spin it, so I'm going to leave it in there. Okay, so I'm going to unbolt those two pulleys. I'm going to put the new ones on, and I'm going to try and show you feeding that timing belt through everything. Okay. Alrighty, so we're just preparing to put the belt in. I've just replaced that idler bearing pulley there. Just be aware that the idler pulley there for the timing belt also holds the bracket on that has the idler pulley for the belt for the air conditioner and the alternator. Okay, so that is all part of the assembly. Now I've put the tensioner pulley also in. So I've just made that tight enough so I can move that pulley backwards and forwards, so I can tension that onto the belt as we need to. And speaking about tensioners, I've just prepared the tensioner as well. I'm going to just walk over and show you that. So the tensioner has a hole through the shaft and a hole through the body of the tensioner, and you need to put that in a vise and get the two holes aligned and drop something into there that you can pull out later on. So basically you need to hold that tensioner closed. So I'm just going to undo that. Whoops, there we go. And there it is. So I just used a nail, and that's just, you can see there, just through the body there, holding that tensioner into place. So that tensioner needs to go up into there basically now. Okay, so time to feed the new belt in. So I've got the bottom sprocket on the engine in place, and the manual says to feed it through the bottom sprocket first. Needs to go, let's see, yeah, needs to go around the tensioner pulley, the idler pulley, around the belt, back down around the water pump, back out from the water pump, and then back over the rear pulley, and then back around the tensioner tensioner pulley and to the sprocket there. And need to get all those points lined up that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to get started on that. I'm going to drop it down through. Okay. I'm just going to leave it sit up the top here, go down the bottom. Alright, so making sure I pull through the wire for the crank angle sensor, and it is on the outside of the belt, and it's going to positively get that belt onto the sprocket down here. And I put it around the the tensioner pulley, just to hold it. Okay, engine's in place still, and the belt's around the sprocket on the crankshaft. Now it's going to feed that around the idler pulley up here, and need to hold that belt tight while you're feeding it into place. No slackness in that belt at all, otherwise your timing's going to be out. You're going to have to do it again. Okay, now my top sprocket doesn't quite want to line up at the moment. I'll need to move it a little bit, which can be difficult because they just want to pop into place because the valves are still, and the rocker gear is still holding it tight. Okay, everything lined up around that one, it's all tight down there. Yeah. Okay, around the water pump, hold it tight around the water pump. And I've got to get around the rear sprocket. I might take it off the tensioner pulley at the moment. Get it tight around the rear sprocket. Get the lines in the way there. Now once again, that one doesn't want to line up quite perfectly, and I'm just going to have to remove that sprocket a little bit. Oops, there it goes, it's on. Okay, and it's got to go back around while it's on there, around the tensioner pulley, while keeping it on everything else. You need to hold that tight and get it on around the tensioner. So I've got it over the tensioner now. Okay, check the positions. That one's in correct position. The front one, it's looking a little bit back, but if it was to move forward it would be totally out of alignment. So I'm going to tighten up the tensioner pulley, tighten the tensioner pulley, probably turn the engine over a crank and see if everything lines up. Grab the old tensioner pulley. So this is the old tensioner pulley. You can see that it's offset, so it's like a cam. By the way, I don't know if you can make a noise. Where's the camera? There it is there. So it's a little bit noisy. Now, because that's on an angle there, what we do is we move the pulley around that angle to get the pulley to go tight onto the belt, as tight as we can by hand, and then we use the tensioner itself to pull the tension up fully there. So I'm going to pull that around so it's tight as I can by hand, and then I'm going to crank the engine over to see if it's right, and then I'll release the tensioner and I'll run it through again as well and see if it's in the correct place. Okay, so we're all good up here. We've got the timing mark on the sprocket lining up with the timing mark on the rocker cover on the rear bank, and on the front bank once again I've got the timing mark on the sprocket lining up with the timing mark on the rocker cover as well. And if I go underneath, I've got the timing mark on the lower sprocket lining up with the timing mark on the engine there. So that's all good. I do have an issue with the tensioner though, and that is between the tensioner body and the bracket on the tensioner itself, pulley bracket. There's supposed to be about a 4 to 6 millimeter gap there, and I've got about a 10 millimeter gap. So I believe I'm going to have to unbolt that tensioner and try and fix that up. So what I've been doing is putting a screwdriver between the bracket and the pulley, while working the bolt up the top there. So it's a little bit hard to do, but I'll see if I can get that a bit better. I ended up driving a wedge between the tensioner bracket and the tensioner bearing, and then tighten it back up again. Well, it's all back together. No spare parts that I could find, so that's always good. And we've got all the belts back in, using appropriate tensioners, so that's good, and they're all tensioned up. So I've just connected the battery up. So let's see if she will fire. Oh, where's the good tester? Here we go. And there we go. All good. So success. So now I'll just get her and put her all back together. Well, thanks for watching. Bye. Well, I don't know if you noticed or heard it when I first started up just then. It was making a bit of a weird whoopy whoop 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 sort of noise. What I found out is that the cover, the front cover, I had it lipped in the wrong way, so it's just hooked in the wrong way, and it was just touching the timing belt itself. So I'll just fix that up and give it another shot, hey? So here we go. And that's it. Nice and good, nice and quiet. So we've got that all good. I would tell you that this is the, I'll turn that off a bit. This is the second Mitsubishi one I've done of these, and a V6. I've done timing belts on other vehicles before, like a V6 Camry, 4-cylinder Camry. Most of the time, if you just watch what you're doing, it's not that hard to do. It's just a bit of a time-consuming job. Some of the hardest things to do is getting the harmonic balancer off, and I did hit that a bit faster than what I would normally like to do, and then just making sure that everything's lined up correctly when you're putting the new belt on. That's about it, and making sure you know where all your nuts and bolts go back to. So you could have a go at it if you want. I think I paid around about $130 for this timing belt kit on eBay, and it's just the belt and those two bearings are changed. You get kits with the tensioner as well and the water pump if you think you want to do those. But if you go to a mechanic, they're probably going to charge around about $700 for that same job. So if you can have a go at it, get things right, make sure you get your timing marks right, and you really can't go wrong. And you can save yourself a lot of money, learn a bit about your car at the same time. Anyway, for this car, the next thing on the engine is valve stem seals. Let's see how we go with that. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Hope it's been helpful to you. Bye.